Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege and honor to invite you all to what I hope will be a very exciting meeting for all of you. Measuring Results, International and South Asian Experiences in Impact Evaluation. It's going to be a day-long event and where we will be hearing experiences, challenges, and opportunities for conducting and using impact evaluations. But before we go there, I want to talk a little bit and very briefly about a few things that we've learned at 3IE after consolidating our experiences in the areas of impact evaluation, systematic reviews, and evidence gaps. And these are the 4 things. Missing in action. Impact evaluations are missing in action. The second, you get what you ask for. Third, things that may seem obvious are not really so. And finally, it takes a village. Let's talk about each one of them very, very quickly. The first one, high quality impact evaluations, missing in action. As you know, or I hope you know, the International Initiative for Impact Evaluation has been working in the area of impact evaluations and systematic reviews for more than 5 years now. During this period, we've collected a lot of learning in understanding as to what are the challenges of doing impact evaluations and how they can be translated or not into policy. But one of the biggest findings that we have is that there is a large gap in high quality evidence, and a large gap in areas that we thought it wouldn't be there. So let me give you an example. Agricultural productivity and innovation. This is an area that has been the mainstay of more than 75% of the population of developing countries today in terms of income generation. And yet, in a scoping study that 3IE helped fund most recently, we found that there were only 126 high-quality impact evaluations in this area. Another area where trillions of dollars have been spent is humanitarian assistance. Humanitarian assistance in the past 5 years has spent more than $90 billion, and this is in areas of conflict and natural disasters. And yet, another scoping study that was to look at high-quality impact evaluations in this area found that there were less than 30 impact evaluations. And this is not even a commentary on the quality of these studies. So my thought was, well, these are areas that have not had a very high tradition of doing impact evaluations. What if we switched and looked at public health, for example? A systematic review that was commissioned by 3IE 2 years ago in the area of community-based maternal health and neonatal mortality found that in Latin America and the Caribbean and in South Asia, where applications of community-based interventions in maternal health and neonatal mortality have been very high, the number of impact evaluations was 27. And maternal mortality, there were even fewer because most of the studies weren't powered to look at the impact of maternal mortality interventions. The second, you get what you ask for. As you know, the International Initiative for Impact Evaluation funds impact evaluations and systematic reviews. We provide technical and financial support for impact evaluations and systematic reviews across the world for interventions in developing countries, in sectors that cut across the development assistance paradigm. We receive proposals from Sub-Saharan Africa, from South Asia and Latin America and the Caribbean. But the proposals that get funded under the aegis of our open window, thematic window, policy window are predominantly in lower middle income countries. So only 37% of our portfolio is in low income countries. And this isn't because, well, we don't want to fund them. It's because the technical quality of the impact evaluation proposals that we get is just not up to par. And so this is my clarion call for increasing capacity in low-income countries and developing countries in general. The second fact that we found after looking at 3IE's online evidence database, which I'd encourage all of you to access and use, it's freely available and is on our website, is that very few impact evaluations are done in the Middle East and in North Africa and in economies in transition. And this remains a gap that still needs to be filled. The second message here is that when we did an analysis of the kinds of impact evaluations that are submitted and the applicant type, we find that there is a large number of applications that obviously come from researchers. Also NGOs, much lesser, so much lesser than the 75%, and some international NGOs. But the number of applications that are made by policymakers who really are our target audience and who really are the ones that we're targeting to use evidence for policymaking are very, very few. So policymakers, where are you? Okay, third message. Things that may seem obvious are not really so. In most impact evaluations, the thing that we encourage most, 3IE works in the area of theory-based impact evaluations. And the first thing we encourage is the development of a very strong theory of change and formative work. But what we see is that most proposals, most studies that we get have very, very poor formative work done in them. Very quick example, one example, is of efficient cook stoves. And the story is pretty easy to tell prima facie. So yes, we know that efficient cook stoves can reduce indoor air pollution. And in fact, there was a study that we started to fund that we funded in Ghana, which looked at the extent to which indoor air pollution and other health impacts can be reduced by the use of efficient cook stoves. But we found 8 months into the study that actually cook stoves don't really get used in the way we anticipate or that we plan for. And most households end up using the efficient cook stoves as well as the traditional cook stoves, thus belying the entire theory of change or the causal chain that we had planned for. So really, the big message here is formative work is not undertaken to the extent that we'd like, and the big message is please pilot. And this is mostly for researchers. The final message is really that it takes a village to do an impact evaluation. So we looked at community-driven interventions. Researchers that we'd funded looked at community-driven interventions in Sierra Leone. And this was a pair-randomized experiment. And the outcomes of this community-directed post-conflict reconstruction effort in Sierra Leone was really to understand the extent to which collective action capacity would be increased, but also benefits would be delivered at the public infrastructure level within these 236 villages that the study was done in. The results. That's not really the focus of this, but the results, in case you're interested, is that yes, material benefits did increase, so public infrastructure did increase, but collective action did not have significant results. But most importantly for me was understanding the range of instruments that were used to measure impact. And this study, for example, used household surveys, focus groups, participatory methods, and structured community activities. So what's the big method in the 11-point or 11-step program that I would advocate for every impact evaluation? A multidisciplinary approach is essential. You need not just economists, not just statisticians, you need anthropologists, surveyors, quantitative data specialists, qualitative data specialists, ethnographers, political experts to come together to do a credible, high-quality impact evaluation. It really does take a village. Okay, so finally to the objectives of this workshop. There are 3 objectives that we've planned for this workshop, but please feel free to add to them. First is exchanging and sharing experiences in conducting impact evaluations. The second is to understand what are the opportunities which allow us to use or not use impact evaluations and systematic reviews for policy making. And then understanding the obstacles in designing, planning, undertaking, and using them, but also then understanding how we can alleviate these obstacles. My final is administrative notes for this meeting. Please tweet, the first one. There is a conference hashtag, which is 3IEValConf, and please tweet while you're here, while you're outside, and use the hashtag. During our breaks and during our coffee and lunch breaks, we will be rolling our tweets not just on the main screen, but also on the television screens outside. We have a conference webpage. Go to our website, and our conference webpage is right up front. And look it up to look at the list of participants, to look at the speakers. There are speaker bios in your folders, but go to our website, look at the evidence portal. This conference has live webcast, and there will also be blogs that will be done after this day. So if you feel like blogging for us and helping out, we'd really welcome it. Parallel sessions. So there are in the afternoon there are 4 sets of parallel sessions, and these will be held concomitantly in this auditorium as well as in the ASCI conference room. Signage is posted everywhere, but if you're in doubt, please ask me or my 3IE colleagues. All of us have pink badges. I think the speakers have pink badges too. But yeah, we'll try and hold up our hands and let you know who we are. And during the day, you'll also find out that there are lots of young people here who'll come and ask you if you're looking a little bit lost. Yeah? So just try and look lost when you are. There are USBs in your folders. We're very proud of them. And these USBs have 3IE publications in them and 3IE reports in them. Please use them. There's also a publications table outside, which has 3IE publications in them. Please use them if you'd like to use those publications. My last note is that media will be present at regular intervals during this conference. If there are speakers who do not want media to cover their events, please let us know. But there will be a live webcast as well, and if you don't want your session to be live webcast, please let us know as well. For members of the audience, if people are coming and talking to you and asking you questions, if you don't want to be asked questions, that's fine, please let them know. But otherwise, please expect to interact with a cross-section of them. And I'll be available during the day to answer any other questions that you might have. And that I might know answers to, and otherwise not. And now, without much further ado, I'd like to introduce our morning panel. I'm very, very privileged to have the Director General of the Administrative Staff College here. The ASCI is co-hosting this event with us, and we are very privileged to have him and the ASCI team here. So thank you very much, Director General. Dr. Rao is the Director General of ASCI Hyderabad, and he has worked at the Commonwealth Secretariat in London in various diplomatic capacities and represented the Secretariat at several conferences at the United Nations, the IMF, the World Bank, and other symposia. He has also served as the Economic Advisor to the Ministry of Commerce, the Government of India. Thank you very much, Dr. Rao.
Thank you, Dr. Jyotsna Puri, for your kind introduction and also setting out the kind of scenario for this conference in terms of why we are meeting and the opportunities that exist. I'm very glad that Dr. Howard White, the Executive Director of CIE, is with us, and also Dr. Ajay Chibbar, Director of the independent evaluation office now located in the government of India, which I think, in fact, shows some of the change I think that's gradually being brought about. I also noticed that Dr. Prajapati Trivedi, who had been doing much work on promoting results-oriented planning in India, would be also participating in the conference. And I think he's directly attached, working in the Cabinet Secretariat of India, and can report to the Prime Minister. So I think these are some of the very kind of perhaps slow but nevertheless positive changes that are being brought about in the country, because people are also very keen to see the government programs do work and deliver. In fact, I think there is a lot of discussion in the political establishments, including the universities, to see whether in fact governments which perform well do not, in fact it could be a democratic asset for them, because there is a kind of cynicism in India, a certain pessimism, that somehow electoral outcomes don't depend upon how well governments deliver, but it's all these vested interest-based political alliances which produce the result at the end of the day. So we have to change that mindset, and I think, I do believe instinctively, where governments actually do deliver, they do acquire the support of the citizen. So we have to somehow help, I think, to spread the news that some programs are successful, they actually make a big difference, and it is a win-win situation for everyone. It's not as if there is a kind of situation of conflict here. It's a question of setting up the systems, and so that the governments themselves and the political leaders actually see the point and say, look, these are things which are working, and we should embrace them. So we must build up the base for that. Now, the main problem is that lack of adequate monitoring and performance management leads to a lot of waste of resources. There are all sorts of inefficiencies, and it's like carrying a pot of water with a bit of a hole in it. So you're actually trying to take water home to drink, and then you find the actual pot has a big hole, and then you end up with very little to drink at the end of the day. So I think setting up strong systems for performance management and evaluation, which help you to identify where these leakages are, and also help you to preserve what we have, makes a huge difference in terms of overall outcomes of whatever we do in the public systems. But then how do we go about doing this? We have to clearly identify where these leakages are, and I think how do we actually close them. And it's not just a question of just talking about it and assuming that human will and good character would do all the job. We must look at the actual systems, which actually would be better in closing those leakages. Now, I think one of the big issues we need to discuss is very often in our governmental system, as possibly in many other cases, we are in the habit of setting our targets for governments, I think in terms of expenditure, given the budget allocations. I think at the state level as well as at the union level, they arrive at some numbers for what is our budget, and then that is the starting point for planning. And then they sit around saying how much money should we spend on this, how much money we should spend on that. So it's really expenditure management rather than any other method. In fact, it should be the other way around. It should be in terms of what is the major responsibility of each agency, ministry, or other bodies, and what is it that they actually want to deliver as part of their plan for the next 5 years or 1 year or whatever, if it is annual budget, and then arrive at what kind of results you are actually hoping to achieve if in fact they can be implemented. So it should be kind of, we should not really jump into the money question right away, but actually set up a credible kind of realistic plan in terms of final outcomes we are trying to achieve. Suppose we set ourselves the target of simply eliminating malaria, or simply reducing the noise on the roads, improve roads in such a way that, in fact, we save time on the roads as well as reduce the expenditure on energy because you have better roads. These targets should actually proceed from there and then estimate what is the money that you should allocate. But the system works in a slightly different way. I mean, the Planning Commission is supposed to do all this, but the system works in terms of each ministry saying, look, our budget last year was X amount, 500 crores, so you must at least protect that and increase it by another 200 crores or whatever. And this is the bargaining that goes on. And the Planning Commission is trying to somehow reconcile this in some way in terms of its own vision for the next 5 years and so on. So there is a lot of disconnectivity between what actually we should achieve at the ground level in terms of various objectives for the government and where the budgets are allocated, which run mainly in terms of money allocations. So this is one, I think, major weakness which must be addressed, because unless we get a certain kind of vision in terms of objectives which are defined at this level of the citizen as the starting point, we would not be able to get out of this conundrum. I think the other one is in terms of execution. Once we have got our own vision of where we should go, the fragmentation of responsibilities, institutional responsibilities for implementation is another bottleneck, because again, you don't find a kind of holistic kind of energy there, but you find different ministries have different responsibilities, mandates, and so on. And I think this fragmentation of responsibility for a single objective means that it actually leads to a tremendous kind of waste of energy, as well as a certain amount of incoherence in terms of being able to work together as strong teams. That's why sometimes we adopt these mission modes in some cases, and I think these missions are making a difference. But still, I think we work with a very fragmented system of policy making as well as responsibility in the country. Now, associated with all this is what we refer to as a silos mentality, in the sense that, because each ministry has its own kind of executive, head to the ministry, the secretary, and I think each one of them become a bit of a silo, and I think they just think about only in that space and not really come out of it. So we need to somehow get out of that, even though there are various ministerial committees which are supposed to overcome this, but it's all settled by a kind of bargaining and I think goodwill towards each other, rather than actually addressing these issues in a hard-mannered manner, hard-mannered manner, I think. And this problem is further complicated by the fact that India is a federal institution. A number of subjects are both union subjects as well as state government subjects. And I think this in turn means that for a decision to proceed ahead, you require tremendous amount of coordination between the union government and the state governments. And of course, the differences in the political objectives of these different governments sometimes create quite a lot of noise in the system. I think now the other aspect, the third kind of issue is lack of adequate incentive systems within our public machinery. I think basically jobs are there, you get promoted on one basis or the other, you know whatever salary is, and there is not really much you can do to actually make people work, unless you cannot easily dismiss anybody. You can kind of put them into kind of what they consider to be uninteresting jobs and so on. But by and large, there's not a kind of, apart from promoting people and trying to transfer people into what civil servants regard as more challenging, interesting jobs, and this interest in particular jobs is not entirely defined by how much good each job can bring to the common man, but in terms of various other criteria. Can you travel here and there, and where you can attend various conferences, and this kind of motivation, which actually vitiates the entire mental framework in terms of what they consider to be a good promotion or a bad promotion. So that should not be the entire case. There should be some way by which we can incentivize civil servants. And I think one of the interesting things is, in fact, what Dr. Prajapati Trivedi is doing, which is not only get civil servants to define what their results should be, what are the results they want to achieve, but also in terms of what the incentives could be if they actually achieve their results. So there is actually an incentivization kind of process which he's trying to bring in. And in fact, in our own college, I remember when we had, when I joined, we really had standard salaries associated with the University Grants Commission or the Indian business schools. But it is a salary, annual salary, whatever you do. But in fact, we thought, given that we need people to be motivated and incentivized, we in fact introduced an incentive system for our own performance, so that those who are actually doing better, measured in one way or the other, in terms of generating a certain, reducing unnecessary expenditure and delivering good projects, etc., they would actually get some better reward at the end of the year, so that it actually had a positive impact. It's a very minor example, but I think we need to take this question of incentives in a very serious way. Certainly some countries do, and I think the country which everybody quotes is Singapore. In Singapore, in fact, the salaries of some of the ministers are partly linked to the national growth rate. If the national growth rate is good and higher, they all seem to get a bonus. And so the salary structure is not frozen, but in fact linked to performance in many ways. And I think that's the kind of thing which we should explore, as long as we can do it in a very transparent, open way. The other, I think, gap we have is, lack of investment in terms of, lack of involvement of citizens really in assessing performance. We have some attempts. I think the best I have read are those which are led by Samuel Paul in Bangalore, who had actually developed these citizen report cards, which are having an impact. But we require some mechanisms by which citizens can actually feed into the performance reporting of governments in some objective way. And I think this needs to be taken further, and I think in such a way that again they retain their integrity, because if the initiatives depend too much upon governmental funding, the citizen report cards, a vested interest can actually develop to see that the results are manipulated. So I think we have to actually have some kind of industry-government collaboration, or some kind of trust in the country, or possibly the World Bank as a very independent agency which is interested in good governance, trying to actually support initiatives which are prepared to go and interview and produce citizen report cards as a means of finding out what is happening at the ground level. But it should not leave any loophole for vested interest to influence the results. So I think that's something which we have to look at. I think it's not India alone which is confronting these challenges. I think this is a very major issue that's being discussed in many countries. So I think we should also actually try and document some of the very best innovative practices in performance management across the world, but which actually could work. And it's not as if it's a thing which only India is attempting or only another country is attempting. I think there is a huge experience in terms of people trying to improve performance through various interesting new ideas. And I think both the United Nations and I think the World Bank and others are actually very deeply committed to spread knowledge. So I do congratulate my colleagues, Dr. Atma Vilas at ASCI, who has actually taken the lead in getting this conference going on our behalf, and also the 3IE for really taking this major initiative in collaboration with World Bank and others. So I wish it a great success. Thank you.